Welcome to Capital Insight. I'm State Representative Kevin Mannix, and I'm your host for this show, which is designed to give all of us a little more insight into the goings-on around our state capital, and usually government, but many times community organizations and community activities. Our guests today are folks who are involved more in the community than in government, although I'd add quickly that it seems sometimes that everything we do in this community has something to do with government. Our guests are Victoria Doyle from St. Vincent's Parish, also known more formally as St. Vincent de Paul Parish, and Michael Taaffe, who is a project director with the Catholic High School. We're going to be talking about the Salem Area Catholic High School project. Now, those of you folks out there who are not Catholic should quickly remember that you shouldn't change channels or tune away, because we are going to be talking about a project that is open to the entire community and involves the entire community. And I will also give you a disclaimer that usually I talk to folks about projects I'm not heavily personally involved in, but I am involved in this project, and that's my little disclaimer for today. Victoria, we usually like to develop a little more information about our guests' personal background. Can you tell us where you hail from?
Actually, I most recently lived in Reno, Nevada. My husband and I and our two children moved to the Salem area about 5 years ago.
And are you involved in your parish? I've mentioned that you're from St. Vincent de Paul. What do you do there?
Actually, I am the president of the school board. My husband and I, our whole family is very much involved with the parish. My husband is the chairman of our pastoral council as well. Our children are, my youngest is in the 2nd grade at St. Vincent's, and I have a 6th grader also at St. Vincent's.
Now, your husband's a lawyer in private practice. What kind of law in particular does he practice?
Employment law.
And you work for SAFE Corporation.
Yes, I do.
Do you find that, is there much interface at all between that? Does SAFE have any special programs for this kind of thing, or do you just do that totally, are you involved in schools just totally separate from SAFE?
Totally separate. I find that community involvement helps as far as keeping some balance. I work very hard at work at SAFE Corporation. I also like to think that I give back to the community too when I'm not working.
Oh, okay. Well, Michael, you're the project director for this Catholic high school project that's developing in the community. Can you tell us, if I remember, you're originally from this area?
I am, although I wasn't born here in Salem. I've grown up in Salem, started grade school at St. Joseph's Catholic School, a few blocks from here, and went through Catholic grade school through the 8th grade. There was not a Catholic high school in Salem for males at the time that I needed to go to high school, so I switched over to the public system. And while that was well and good, today we're working on a project to develop a Catholic high school in Salem once again.
Well, before we jump right into your work with that project, weren't you with the Economic Development Department?
I was. I worked for the State Economic Development Department for 5 years, Kevin, until this summer. And in that work, I worked with businesses a great deal in the Business Development Division, as a matter of fact, in the department. And we recruited businesses. We worked with businesses who were here in the state with their expansion plans. We did a lot of financial analysis work with them and for them. And I bring some of those skills to this project to see if we can make it go forward.
Well, you've been the project director now since early in the summer, is that right?
That's right.
In that role, have you been able to, well, I guess we should just jump right into the question of this whole project. Where are we now as far as this project goes?
We've done all the homework, at least the preliminary homework that we can do, and we have put it in a package form and sent it to the Archdiocese of Portland. And we hope to receive a response. They have to evaluate it. Both do financial evaluation of the project as well as evaluation from a curriculum standpoint, personnel, various aspects of starting a school is like starting any small business. There are many, many facets to it that have to come together all at one time and work reasonably smoothly so that you stay in business. They're going to evaluate it from that standpoint and get back to us and say, hopefully you have a go, but I'm sure they'll say there are some weaknesses here, there are some weaknesses there. Can you work with us to correct them, strengthen them, and we'll take those suggestions and run with them.
Well, Victoria, in terms of this project, you're on the steering committee, which is a group that's helping to move this along. What are the moral or philosophical dimensions to Catholic education as opposed to standard public education?
Well, I can say the tremendous difference in my mind is the community involvement, the parental involvement. I think from a personal standpoint, when you talk about the education of your children, it's not the time that they spend in a building from 8 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a total 24 hours a day living basic moral and your values, living what you believe in. I think with Catholic education, that's what you do. You are able to extend your beliefs into the classroom, outside the classroom. The biggest joy I have on Sundays is after Mass, when we go downstairs for coffee and rolls, and my children get to play with the same children that they see during the week. That to me is a real plus, and that's one of the greatest advantages of Catholic education, that your whole life is your church community, is your school community. It's all blended together, so it's not just segmented pieces of it.
Now, I'd want to contrast this in terms of the public school system.
Mm-hmm.
Some folks always worry or wonder whether or not the parochial schools are meant to be an attack on the public school system.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be fair to say we're talking more about an alternative to the public school system instead of trying to infuse public schools with religious doctrine, which would be inappropriate
Mm-hmm.
under our Constitution? Those of us who want to have religious doctrine infused in our child's education have chosen to set up an alternative system.
Mm-hmm. I don't have my children going to St. Vincent de Paul School because I don't like the public school system. Initially, when we moved to Salem, my daughter went to Inglewood because we were unable to get her into St. Vincent's or into St. Joseph's at the time. I like Inglewood quite a lot. I was involved with their parent group there too. But again, it's enhancing my children's lives by being able to add something in addition to. It's not that I don't like public schools, it's just for my family and for our lives, we want something else. And that's the moral, the religious, the faith formation that you get from a Catholic school, from St. Vincent de Paul School.
Now, Michael, in terms of this project, is there any outreach going on beyond the Catholic community proper? Or I mentioned earlier, sort of a disclaimer, that this isn't just for Catholics. Can you give us some idea of what the dimensions of this project are all about?
That's right, Kevin. Certainly it's a Catholic school, but in the tradition of Catholic schools, they have always been open to people of other faiths. And in the educational vein, they're generally committed to academic excellence, which this school certainly will be. And they teach the same curriculum, generally, that a public school system would teach. And there are state regulations that require certain curricula to be taught. And we'll certainly meet all of those and exceed it in most areas. But the school itself and the outreach in the community is very broad. The doors are open to people who want quality education. And we're not setting that up as an alternative, again, to the public school system in the sense that there is no quality education in the public school system. We don't mean to say that, but this is an alternative educational opportunity for those who wish it. And we hope that people in the community do know that the doors are open wide.
As part of the curriculum, I assume there'll be some teaching of religion. Does that create a barrier for folks from other faiths, or are they allowed to participate in some special way? What's the notion behind that? Victoria, can you address that?
That's a tough one. It is a Catholic high school. The intent is it's a Catholic high school with a capital C. You can't get away from the fact it's Catholic. It's Christian values. Obviously, at Christmas time, we will celebrate the meaning, what our feeling is for the meaning of Christ's birth and Christmas, other religious holidays. And I can't imagine that we would ever force anyone to do anything that they're not comfortable with, but I think people still need to know that the intent is that it is faith formation.
As part of that process, would we see something similar to what we already see with the elementary schools and the mid-high that presently exist in Salem, where non-Catholics are welcome to participate, but they have to be at least accepting of the Christian values that are in the curriculum, and while they don't have to accept the Catholic faith, they need to recognize that religion is taught as a subject. And from what I've seen at St. Joseph's School, where my children go to school, people of other faiths are actually allowed to share some of their insights. I know that there's been at least one presentation by a Jewish student about his faith and faith formation. And there seems to be some symmetry and some outreach that's developed at the same time that Catholic principles and values are maintained within the school. Sort of an ecumenical approach, where we don't ask other people to convert, but they certainly, if they're participating in the education program, they also have to be sharing in the formation of values for the children. Is that how you see this working?
I think it exposes other people to what we do believe in. I think a good example might be my family is a Tomodachi family for Tokyo University, and we've had students who come and do things with us. Obviously their Japanese or English is not the greatest, yet they have a strong desire to learn other things. So we're very welcoming as far as bringing them to our church. We certainly are not trying to convert them, but part of being a Tomodachi family is exposing these Japanese students to things that we do in the United States. So we've had them go to a couple things that were very much religious-based. Again, we're not trying to convert them, we just want to expose them. And of course that brings all sorts of questions. They ask a lot of questions, why do we do this, why do we do that? And they have someone there they can ask those questions of. I would think the same thing with this high school, with the mid-high, that it still is Catholic, but it opens up to a lot of people the same types of things that they would want from their personal perspective and their own growth. Whether or not they believe in the Catholic teachings of the Church, they still are open to that.
All right. Well, how will this fit in with the Archdiocese? In fact, Michael, why don't you give us some idea about the structure and location of the school and what the timing is?
The location, proposed location, Kevin, would be on Market Street, east of Lancaster Drive, for people who are familiar with Salem. It's the Salem Christian Center facility, which already exists there. That group still maintains a presence on that campus, but they have ample space available for ourselves in this particular situation to come in, use a portion of that facility to start a school. And they've been very gracious about working with us to use some of that available space.
Now, wasn't that a pretty exciting part of this whole process? Historically, this whole project just began in February when a group of us just called a meeting and said, if you're interested in a Catholic high school for our community, come. And then 160 people showed up, and then we built a steering committee and went through the study process and then determined it seemed like a doable thing, so now we went ahead and put together a proposal to go to the Archbishop for approval. But as part of that process, in looking for locations, when the Christian Center was found as a viable potential site, my recollection is that they prayed on this, the leadership of that Christian organization, that Christian church, carefully thought about it and determined that as part of their ecumenical ministry, it'd be appropriate for them to cooperate with the Catholic community in allowing their facility to be considered and negotiating about the use of that facility. How have you perceived that process? How has that gone?
You're absolutely right, Kevin, and essentially, it was a very good thing for us, a windfall in a sense. We had searched the community. One of the groups in the steering committee, or the committee formation of this high school early on, was a facilities committee, and their charge was to go out in the community and look at existing facilities and potential sites for a new school and see what may be available in the community. Well, they came back after looking at existing facilities and said, this one's too big, this one's too small, this one's not available, and this one is, potentially. We need to go talk to these folks. And they did that, and the group at the Christian Center did evaluate what we were doing, see if it fit in with their idea of Christian values, and they did pray on it, and they decided that they could open their doors to ourselves, and that would be in keeping with their desire to use those facilities for Christian purposes.
So that has been almost serendipity in terms of the fact that they had the facility available at the very same time that the group was looking for a facility. What sort of size of a school are we talking about? Can you give us a notion about, we're talking about a mid-high and a high school.
We're talking about a mid-high and a high school. Combined, initially those numbers would be around 225 students we're projecting. There's opportunity to easily grow into a school of 500 plus students with the available facilities at the Christian Center.
I'm going to pause for a moment as we mention that and mention to our audience that you're with us on Capital Insight. I'm your host, State Representative Kevin Mannix from Salem. I'll also throw out a disclaimer that my work with the Catholic High School has nothing to do with my job as a state representative. I do that only as a private citizen. Please remember that we do have a citizen legislature. We only serve part-time as legislators. If you have any questions or concerns at any time about what comes up on any Capital Insight show or about the story of government in general in the Salem area, feel free to contact me at Capital Insight, H395, State Capitol, Salem, Oregon, 97310, and I'll always be happy to respond. Our guests are Michael Taaffe, who is Project Director for the Salem Area Catholic High School, and Victoria Doyle, who is on the steering committee, and she's President of the St. Vincent de Paul School Board. We were just talking about some of the mechanics of the Catholic High School. I should add quickly, Michael, that's not the final name that's going to be applied to this school, is it?
No, it's not, Kevin, and there's a process going on right now where the schools in Salem, Catholic schools in Salem and outlying communities are providing us names that we will then use as a basis to select a name for the new school. So yes, it will have a new name.
And Victoria, what parishes are going to participate in this or be involved in this Catholic high school? What area are we talking about, actually?
We're talking about the local Salem community, which would include Queen of Peace, St. Joseph's, St. Vincent's, St. Edward's, the outlying parishes. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, and perhaps now would be a good time, is there is a Catholic high school at Regis High School. That is a separate vicariate. We are not looking to take students from that high school because we feel there's a need here in Salem in this local community that we also can have a vital high school separate from Regis High School.
Now you mentioned vicariate, that's Catholic speak. That's a group of parishes who are together administratively for certain purposes within an archdiocese. And so Stayton, where Regis is located, is part of what is it, the North Santiam Vicariate? And so they're dealing with their needs. As I understand it, Regis is virtually full anyway.
Yes. There are a number of people that travel out from Salem and outlying areas here to go to Regis High School. And that was one of the reasons why we saw there was a need for a high school here in our own town.
So Regis will continue to serve the North Santiam Vicariate. This Salem area Catholic high school would serve the central Willamette Valley.
Yes.
Now, we've talked about a mid-high being associated with the high school. How is that going to work?
Well, currently St. Joseph's here in Salem has mid-high, 7th and 8th grade. Because Catholic education has become a choice of so many people, St. Joseph's is becoming very full. Their lower grades have got double classes. The idea was to have St. Joseph's be able to serve as a community mid-high where Queen of Peace and St. Vincent students could go from 6th grade to St. Joseph's.
So Queen of Peace and St. Vincent's are K through 6,
exactly.
with preschool also at St. Vincent's.
With preschool at St. Vincent's. The idea is to have those students be able to go from their respective parishes into St. Joseph's. However, because the classes are so full, that may pose a problem in the future. So we are hoping that we can still maintain St. Joseph's if they choose to as a separate parish school with 7th and 8th grade, but still move forward and having a mid-high combined with the high school. So you literally could have K through 12th grade Catholic education in Salem.
Now, as far as St. Vincent's and Queen of Peace went, they had been looking at the idea of opening up their own mid-highs, but with this project, they'll now have a centralized mid-high available. Is that the idea?
And that's another real benefit of this project, Kevin, is that we've been able to pull so many different people together. I think it was you mentioned one time that in a room full of people, we had parishioners from Queen of Peace, from St. Joseph's, from St. Vincent's, all working on a common goal, and that was to develop a mid-high and high school. Typically, everyone works for their own parish because they have their own local parish needs. We were working all together. We've had so many people who have been able to combine their skills and their abilities and their many talents to come together with this one project, and I think that's been very positive for the Salem Catholic community.
Now, as far as putting this project together, Michael, you've been the project director, which has been a full-time job for you, and money was raised as a nest egg through the Salem Catholic Schools Foundation to help fund this project with special contributions dedicated to that purpose. Where are we now as far as the approval process goes? What kind of a timeline are we looking at? You've mentioned that the proposal, which is 300-odd pages long, it has been delivered to the Archbishop. Where do we go from here?
Well, that's right, Kevin, and I should back up a little bit. You mentioned that the group started in February, so it's taken from February until now, November 1st, when we delivered the proposal to Portland, to develop that background and put it in package form. It is now in the hands of the Archdiocese, and they will be disseminating it and reviewing it and creating questions and comments for us. And then at some point in the next, we hope, 60 days, by the end of the year, we will have a positive response from them, or a definitive response from them, one way or another, so that we know what to do come 1st of January 1995.
In terms of that proposal, I haven't told you, but I did get a phone call before we did this show from one of the people who's been assigned by the Archdiocese to review our proposal, and the person was highly complimentary about the professionalism of the product. My own view of it was that if it was a government project, it probably would have cost $125,000 to produce. I'm only kidding, folks, but that there was a tremendous amount of volunteer time involved in this. Weren't you the only paid staff person involved?
Wonderful volunteer help. I was the only paid staff, and project director is a wonderful title, but really it was all the volunteers that made this happen, and all I did was coordinate their activities, help make sure that a committee on the left was working with a committee on the right, and that when they both submitted pieces of the project, that those pieces fit together.
Now, in terms of those pieces, the people involved included what? Lawyers, architects, even school psychologists, educators, primary, secondary educators, college educators. It seems, my perception is that we seem to have covered every possible professional investment in education in terms of the volunteers. What's your reaction, Victoria?
Oh, I definitely agree. There were times I would look around the table and I was just in awe of the talent. And as you said, we had architects, lawyers, school psychologists, people who had K through college background in Catholic schools. It was incredible. It goes back to the same thing you mentioned before about the serendipity with the possibility that the Christian Center could be available for our facility. Same thing, we have all these groups of people together that were able to work so hard and so quickly. If you look at it in reality from February until now, it's just incredible.
I might add to that, in that there's another, if you cut that a different way, the diversity again in the group was, those were not all Salem citizens. They came from outlying areas and drove to meetings weekly to help this project along, as well as they were not all Catholic. There were non-Catholics who helped on a number of the committees because they thought that this school idea was good for the community.
As we pick up on that and as we work through this process, do you see any further public involvement over the next couple of months? Will there be a fundraising project going? What do you see happening?
Two things need to happen, Kevin. We need to firm up the enrollment projections and see if they're real, see if people really are going to enroll their children.
And the proposal is to open in the fall of '95,
The proposal is to open in the fall of '95. So in the next 90 days, we'll be firming up enrollment projections, and in that same 90-day period, we will be firming up money. It does take some money to start this project. It's, again, like any small business, it takes some startup capital. We will be out in the community raising money as one of the commitments to the Archdiocese to open this school.
Now, part of that process is also a commitment by this group not to use traditional sources of income, not to go to the churches for the collection baskets and that sort of thing. Is that part of the money raising we're talking about, or is that going to be kept out of this?
That will be kept out of this, and there was a commitment to the parishes to do that. And there are opportunities to raise money in other areas and to be creative in raising money. We have no strings attached, so to speak, because we have no baggage. This is a brand new project, so we can do as we choose. And it would be nice to reach out broadly and raise money from some interesting sources to help this school get started.
Let me ask you quickly for a phone number where folks can reach you. I know for a few days at least you'll be off, but taking a little rest after getting this report completed. But there's voicemail available. What's the number people can call?
The High School Development Office is number 391-2639.
391-2639.
That's correct.
And folks can call and leave a voicemail message, or where can they write to you if they want to express support?
Through Post Office Box 13207, and that's Salem 97309.
All right, 13207 is the P.O. Box?
That's correct.
And the zip code's 97309. And in case anybody missed that, they can always contact me, and I can always pass them on to you. Now, as far as this goes, you talked about the structure of this. Are we talking about community ownership for this high school?
Yes, we are, and we have all along. It's been a concept that was comfortable in this community with the people who were developing this project.
Is that partially in reaction to the two Catholic high schools historically that failed, that closed down, were both owned and operated by outside religious orders who made those decisions about shutting them down really without community input? They sort of advised the community, hey, we're shutting down, and there's been that is baggage in terms of the emotional reaction to whether or not there's going to be a high school here. So this project is designed to have the community invested in it and really owning and operating it under the Archdiocese, rather than having a religious order come in and say, gee, we're going to open a school for you. Is that the idea?
That is, Kevin, and unfortunately, that's correct. We have a little bit of baggage with some previous high schools in this community. But we have grown through those experiences, and this, again, is comfortable in this community. The community recognizes the difficulties of dealing with the previous experiences, and they can embrace this concept of, okay, let's get together and we'll own it and make it work.
We've also had a real dynamic of growth in Catholic education, which I think is a changed factor as opposed to the 60s and 70s and 80s. People are now turning back to Catholic education as an opportunity for faith formation, as you mentioned, also an opportunity for a disciplinary system that can be involved. I guess tough love might be one way of approaching it, where discipline and moral values are intertwined. Are these some things that are important to you, Victoria?
Yes, very much so. I think especially, again, not saying I want this school to serve as an escape from public schools, but to serve as a place where our children can go. I had someone explain to me it was like they're a small town as opposed to a large city, that when you go for Catholic education, it's because you're similar in an environment to a small town. You know everyone, you feel comfortable with everyone, so you get more of that than you would in if you were a public school.
Now, Michael, what kind of tuition rates are we talking about for the community as a whole, as well as for Catholics who get a special break?
For the community as a whole, the high school tuition will be $3,900. For Catholics, the tuition will be $2,900. And that's because it's subsidized from the general tuition level through.
And what about the mid-high? Is that the same, or is it?
The mid-high will be lower. Mid-high tuition will be for Catholics will be $2,400, excuse me, and for general community will be $2,900.
So $3,900 high school for general community, $2,900 high school for Catholics, and then at the mid-high level, it's $2,900 general community and $2,400 for Catholics.
That's correct.
And then will there be tuition grants available to help those who can't quite make the tuition?
There will be, and there will also be for families who have multiple children enrolled in the school. There will be some special consideration for their needs in light of tuition.
And in the fall of '95, when the high school and mid-high opens, grades would be 7, 8, 9, and then also 10?
That's correct, Kevin, and we should have probably stated that earlier. We would go to grade 12 initially, but the likelihood is that there is not enrollment for particularly the 11th and the 12th grade, because those students are well entrenched in whatever school they are currently getting their education in, and would not likely make a jump for 1 year or 2 years of a startup school. Should there be enrollment for those grades, they can certainly be added, but our early projections and the feedback we're getting from the community is 10th grade is about the upper limit.
And basically, as far as the community is concerned, in terms of enrollment, there'll be some pre-enrollment opportunity, and folks can call or write in to get those forms?
Yes, and they can call the office, and we will send them the enrollment packet. We have it prepared now as a pre-enrollment. They would be contacted then in the spring after we have a feedback from the Archbishop and the Archdiocese about whether or not we can move forward with this in 1995.
Okay, and the goal is approval in January from the Archbishop? That's the goal right now?
Yes, that's the goal.
Well, with that goal in mind, I'd like to thank you, Victoria and Michael, for joining us. And I'd like to thank our audience for joining us. You've been with us on Capital Insight, and I'm your host, Kevin Mannix.